Well, we understand that the deal was finally signed off by EU ambassadors around just after 8 o'clock this morning. They met at 7 after we had that late night negotiations continuing right up to the wire. We understand from our sources that those talks are really only coming to the final agreement around midnight, just before 2 a.m. When both teams were satisfied that they had reached this deal, but we still had to wait for that to be finally struck. When we spoke to Jonathan Reynolds this morning, he was still telling us that the teams were still working on it behind the scenes. So the stage is now set here at Lancaster House, a very grand surroundings that you can see behind me. The red carpet has been laid out for those EU leaders to arrive and meet with Sir Keir Starmer later on at the summit, which is due to start around 11 o'clock this morning. Now, in terms of what has been agreed within this agreement, well, it's being celebrated by Nick Thomas-Symonds, who is the UK Cabinet Minister, who was the lead negotiator on this as a deal which is good for jobs, good for bills, good for borders and more. He said it shows that Britain is back on the world stage. So I'm sure we're going to hear much more about that. In terms of the details of what's in it, well, we know that there's been some agreement on animal veterinary checks on goods coming in and out of the UK, which the government is hopeful will mean there will be quicker progress of goods. There won't be such long delays at the borders, of red tape holding up lorries full of goods for the supermarkets and consumers, which will also hopefully bring down prices. But in return for that, which is a key ask from the UK, we understand that they have given ground on fishing. So they've struck a deal for EU fishing fleets for the next 12 years. And initially, we understand the UK was looking at around a 4-year period. That's now obviously been extended for 12 years, although we're told there's been no change in the quota of the fishing quotas that have been agreed on that. Now, that's something that the Tories have jumped on, Kemi Bay, not saying, well, that's 3 times more than the UK government originally wanted, that we're giving way, we're taking rules from the EU again, because it does suggest under this agreement on the sanitary standards, perhaps there is an agreement around how the UK and EU standards will align in future. That's obviously a real concern of Brexiteers. Richard Tice this morning from Reform UK has been making the point that he believes that the UK is surrendering some of its Brexit freedoms by agreeing to take rules from the EU again. The government, of course, making the point that this is about growth, this is about boosting the economy. And we know also that talks are set to continue on the issue of youth mobility. This is something the EU is very keen to see as part of a deal, but nothing has been formally agreed on this as yet. Again, that's something that Reform and the Conservatives are worried about, saying it could usher in a return to freedom of movement. The government is insisting that's not the case. It would be time limited and controlled, but talks very much still on the way on that. We're also expecting to hear more about an agreement on defence and security too.